quite know what you're gonna get with a Doctor Who episode. One week it might be just a simple Monster of the Week story, another week it could be a history lesson, and then some high concept thrill ride. Sometimes all three combined into one. But every now and then you get something that's so shocking and different that it really catches you off guard. Now, we're not talking about plot twists and cliffhangers here, but more overall stories and episodes that are just unique and different and really unexpected to what we usually see. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie with Who Culture, here with 10 Doctor Who episodes nobody was ready for. Number 10, The Night of the Doctor. In the build-up to Doctor Who's 50th anniversary, they released a mini-sode called The Night of the Doctor, which featured Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor, which was the first time we'd seen him on our screens since the TV movie in 1996. Now, when Christopher Eccleston took to the screens in 2005, there was no explanation as to why 8 had now become 9. We didn't know why he'd regenerated and what happened there. And it was kind of implied that this was a new regeneration because 9 didn't know what he looked like until he looked in the mirror. But in this minisode, instead of regenerating into Christopher Eccleston, Paul McGann regenerated into John Hurt as the War Doctor, which did give us a few answers to some questions that we had following the name of the Doctor, and let us know where in that lineup the War Doctor actually fit. This minisode was filmed quite secretly, and so the return of Paul McGann was such a surprise and so great to see because everyone wanted to see more Paul McGann. Number 9, Fugitive of the JUDOON. At first, Fugitive of the JUDOON just seemed like any other mid-series episode. But boy, did it take some unexpected turns. Not only did it see the return of Captain Jack Harkness, which had actually been kept quite quiet, so to see him pop back up on our screens was really surprising and shocking, and it was really nice to see some of those past characters brought back in this kind of soft reboot that Chris Chibnall had been running. Fugitive of the JUDOON also saw the first introduction of the Fugitive Doctor and the Timeless Child story arc. What was really intriguing about this episode is the fact that both incarnations of the Doctor here didn't recall living the life of each other. So that really posed the question then of whether this was a future incarnation, which you would expect, or a past incarnation. But of course, the Timeless Child story arc then unfolded even more and explained that in more detail. But at face value, watching this episode, it really was intriguing and something that we hadn't really seen before. Number 8, Asylum of the Daleks. Now, when it was announced that Karen Gillan and Arthur Darvill would be leaving Doctor Who and Jenna Coleman would be coming on as the new companion, it was kind of just expected that the new companion wouldn't show up until Amy and Rory had left. But Asylum of the Daleks rolled around, and here was Jenna Coleman as Oswin Oswald in an episode that Amy and Rory were still very much a part of. Most people assumed that what would happen would be the Doctor would save Oswin, and she would join the TARDIS team, and then at some point Amy and Rory would leave and Oswin would stay on. But as we know, Oswin was turned into a Dalek in this episode, so for all intents and purposes she died. So that then begged the question of how can Jenna Coleman be playing the future companion if the companion that we've just seen, or that character, has just died? And of course we did get answers to that later on in series 7, but this was a really interesting way of introducing the new companion that differed from the usual kind of bumping into someone in trouble and them tagging along for the rest of the series kind of vibes. Number 7, The Power of the Doctor. Where do you even start with The Power of the Doctor? Right from the offset, you knew you were going to see the return of Ace and Tegan, which had been promoted from that early marketing, and also Kate Stewart as well. But what was most surprising is this episode was not promoted as a multi-Doctor story. So when you had Doctors number 1, 5, 6, 7 and 8 all making cameos in this episode, that was truly shocking and surprising and totally unexpected. On top of that, you had a very rare instance where you had the 5th Doctor interacting with Tegan and the 7th Doctor interacting with Ace. Now, you do sometimes see past companions interacting with the current Doctor, but very rarely do you get to see the companions interacting with their doctor. And it was just beautiful to see these moments, and it kind of felt full circle, like a bit of closure for those characters. Number 6, Sleep No More. Mark Gatiss' Sleep No More is one of the most divisive episodes of the revival. Now, a lot of this divisiveness came from the strange nature of this episode, which a lot of people would argue didn't pay off. It just went so far against the usual expected structure of a Doctor Who episode. It kind of played out like a found footage horror film, and even went as far as to forego the iconic title sequence in favour of a custom title card. It also ended on a kind of open-ended, unresolved cliffhanger, which again is so unlike Doctor Who that it just didn't feel right. And it also left a lot of fans feeling a little bit uneasy and a little bit kind of jarred. Overall, it's a little bit like Love and Monsters. It attempted to do something different and follow a different kind of structure, but most people don't like change, and if you go too far out of the comfort zone, people aren't going to like it. They watch Doctor Who for what it is, and when you try to make it something new and something different, that doesn't tend to go down too well with the fans. Number 5, The Girl Who Waited. Similarly to Amy's Choice, this episode focused less on the kind of monster and more so on the relationship between Amy and Rory, and also brings the Doctor's recklessness and morals, particularly in relation to his companions, into question. Now, they arrive on a planet called Apalapachia, and Amy soon finds herself in a different timeline to the Doctor and Rory, and is waiting for them to come and get her, basically. Now, later on, we meet an older, more bitter version of Amy who has waited 36 years. Then the episode kind of flits between the older Amy and the younger Amy, and what built up until the final moments of the episode, where the Doctor promises Rory that both versions of Amy can exist in the TARDIS at the same time. But what is rule 1? The Doctor lies. And this is where the episode kind of takes a very dark turn, and the Doctor is forced to leave the older Amy behind and save the younger version. And in terms of plot, it's something very different, something we hadn't seen before, and overall was a very surprisingly good episode. Number 4, Blink. Now, after Love and Monsters, the idea of a Doctor Light episode was quite concerning, but Blink certainly put those concerns to rest. Now, of course, this episode centres around Sally Sparrow as she encounters the Weeping Angels for the first time. The entire episode is just a combination of great writing, great acting, some of the greatest villains ever created for Doctor Who. The fact that the Doctor wasn't there actually didn't really make much of a difference. It just worked, knowing that he wasn't there to save the day and that Sally Sparrow had to carry this entire episode on her own, and did so brilliantly. Now, of course, Stephen Moffat had already written some brilliant episodes for Doctor Who. The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances, The Girl in the Fireplace, so people were expecting this to be a good episode, but I don't think they quite expected it to be as amazing as it was, to create one of the scariest episodes of Doctor Who ever made, and to create some of the greatest villains that Doctor Who has ever seen. It just put Doctor Who on a whole new level that we had not seen before. Number 3, The Timeless Children. Now, love it or hate it, you can't deny that nobody expected the game-changing plot twists that featured in The Timeless Children. Nobody saw it coming. Now, the Doctor and the audience were very shocked to find out that everything we thought we knew about the character were apparently wrong. We all assumed that the Doctor was a Time Lord from Gallifrey, and while that is technically still the case, it turns out that the Doctor is from a different planet entirely and is the source of the Time Lord's regenerative powers that we see in the show today. It was a bold move on Chris Chibnall's part, but a lot of fans were not impressed by it. They didn't like the fact that the fundamentals of the last 60 years of Doctor Who had been changed and altered, and you can kind of see why. We all knew that Chris Chibnall was going to try and put his mark on Doctor Who, but I think rewriting the entire backstory of the character was not quite where we thought he was going to go with it. Number 2, Rose. Now, there was a lot of skepticism surrounding the 2005 revival, which is not surprising when the last lot of Who that we saw on TV was the 1996 TV movie. Now, there was a lot of criticism. They changed the logo, they changed the TARDIS, and as we've already established, people don't like change. It went as far as hate mail being sent to the production team in the build-up to the show airing. People didn't think it was going to work, but it did. The first episode, Rose, peaked at 10.81 million viewers when it aired, and is still one of the most viewed episodes of New Who to this day. I mean, the episode had massive boots to fill. You needed to appeal to a new audience, but also needed to appease the classic audience members as well. And it did so in such a clever way by focusing on the new companion and seeing the world of Doctor Who through these new eyes, but it also introduced the first episode with classic Who monsters in the Autons. So in short, it just all worked. It worked incredibly well, and without that episode doing as well as it did, we would not be heading into the 60th anniversary year of Doctor Who. Number 1, The Name of the Doctor. Now, The Name of the Doctor aired just a few months prior to the 50th anniversary special, and so there was a lot of anticipation as to how this episode would end and how that would then lead into the 50th. Now, the episode as a whole was just a pretty generic season finale, although it did finally answer the questions on how Clara seemed to always appear in the Doctor's life, despite dying several times in Series 7. But of course, the moment that was the most unexpected was those last few seconds of the episode when we saw John Hurt turn around and those words, introducing John Hurt as the Doctor, popped up on our screen. It got fans really excited. It sent them into a frenzy for months in the build-up to that 50th anniversary special. But this moment changed Doctor Who forever. It introduced a new incarnation of the Doctor that we'd never seen before. And it actually gave us a lot of answers to questions we'd had in regards to the Time War and the destruction of Gallifrey ever since the revival in 2005, and the revelation that Gallifrey was gone, even though we knew that it existed in the classic era of Doctor Who. And that concludes our list. If you think we missed a really important one, then do let us know in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell so you never miss a Who Culture video again. I've been Ellie with Who Culture. I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild, and in the words of River Song herself, goodbye, sweeties.